Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Saturday night, Sunday morning. So, good evening, good morning, depending on whatever your time zone could be, in as far as this evening is concerned. For me, it's already Sunday because it's 8 minutes past the hour of midnight. So my calendar is already reading 29th of March 2026. So be keen to remember that. Anyways, I hope you had a wonderful day. I know with international football on, as for some of you, the day might be dull or the weekend may have been dull, but it is the nature of such days. But I hope for those of you that are football enthusiasts, you've been enjoying the game between the USA and Belgium. That game went into halftime 1-1, but Belgium have come back with a scintillating second half, and they are leading that game by 4 goals to 1 as we speak. So that is also happening. I do not think we need any recap of yesterday's events in regards to what happened with England or anything in that regard with Germany and Switzerland. I don't think we need any recap of that. But this is the official first weekend of international football. Of course, it will proceed through Sunday, through Saturday, and subsequently Monday and Tuesday, with the very last games set for Wednesday before players start returning to their respective clubs to return back to club football. For the Premier League, I think let me see, majority of their clubs, which is what? Let me see. I think as many as 13 clubs are not going to have weekend football. Why? Because when we return from the international break, in as far as the Premier League is concerned, it's going to be the FA Cup, and you only have 7 teams from the Premier League. That's Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester City, West Ham, Leeds, and who else? Because there's supposed to be 8 teams. So for those of you that are just joining us, welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it is your first time here. I do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda, where it's 10 minutes past the hour of midnight, which means it's already Sunday, the 29th of March. So, yeah. Do me the absolute honor and favor and like the broadcast while you're still here with us. I can see we have Noah. Noah says a permission to subscribe. Please, Noah, you don't need any permission. You just need to do us the favor of subscribing to the channel. Then Shahadat. Is that how you pronounce your name? Shahadat Teza says, hi, raise your hands and say hi. Hi, how are you doing? Good to have you on the podcast. Hope you're enjoying yourself. Meanwhile, this doesn't happen quite very often, but it does happen anyway, or can happen anyway. The game between Belgium and USA got people confused when teams came out with literally the same colors of outfits, with only shorts differing in color. And as unfortunate as that may sound, perhaps because we do not expect it at the level of this sort of caliber, but it is a friendly. I think they'll have to take it in for what it is and do better next time. But I had never seen it before, where two teams that have known that they were going to play each other for days come out and they are clashing on kits. It does not happen very often. That's why I'm seeing it for the very first time. Nonetheless, like they say, surprises do not discriminate. I guess this is my surprise for the weekend. So yeah, plenty of things are happening in as far as international football is concerned. On Tuesday, teams are preparing for their World Cup playoffs. We know for a fact that Italy will be up against Bosnia-Herzegovina and things like that. Now, we do have some news regarding two England youngsters and Arsenal players. Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka have left the England camp for medical assessment. John Stones and Noni Madueke also return to clubs due to injury. We spoke about Noni Madueke's injury following after being forced off in the first half in that game against Uruguay. So, guys, please do me the absolute honor and favor and like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel while you're here with us. I can see you 26 there, but we only have 4 likes. So do me the absolute honor and favor and like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it is your first time here. And let me know where you're joining us from. Or leave me a comment down in the comment section, and I'll be reading each and every one of your comments. So thank you so much. So it's not pretty when you hear these kinds of things, particularly for Manchester City and Arsenal, because yesterday Phil Foden, although he's not been mentioned among the players that have he's not been mentioned among the players that have also left the camp, but for particularly for Arsenal, they lost Noni Madueke yesterday to injury. He had to go. By the time he left Wembley, he had a strap on his knee, so that doesn't really look good. It was on his left knee. For those of you that care to remember, earlier on in the season, he suffered a knee injury to his right knee in Arsenal's game against Manchester City. So they lost him for about 6 weeks. With approximately 9 weeks left to the end of the season, I do not think they would want to be entertaining any form of injuries that are in the realm of 6 weeks or so. So this news regarding Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka really, I'm sure will leave some Arsenal fans unsettled. Hi, Yukesh. Always good to see you around. Say, yo, what's good, brother? Portugal playing just hours from now. I can't wait to watch that game. And the GOAT, Cristiano, you remember me, bro? Obviously, I do remember you. You're from South Africa. Maybe the one thing I may have forgotten is the particular part of South Africa where you come from. Is it Johannesburg or Durban? Maybe Johannesburg. That's what you said. But I do remember you. So, like I said, it's never good news. So for Manchester City on the other side, following that dangerous tackle by Ronald Araujo on Phil Foden, eventually was forced off through injury, does not leave them, any relief, even though he's not mentioned among players that have left the England camp, because it's not just the Arsenal duo in Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka leaving the England camp for medical assessment. It is John Stones and Noni Madueke also. So that means 3 Arsenal players have left the England camp. Yet already they had Ebeleche Eze missed out on on being part of the England camp and was replaced by Harvey Barnes for injury reasons. And we have since learned that he suffered a calf injury that will keep him out for the next 4 weeks. Marasha Margaret says, bro, Cristiano must get the World Cup and make history in South Africa, Limpopo. It looks like we do have somebody from South Africa, somebody else from South Africa. Yukesh does remind us kindly that he is from Johannesburg, there, South Africa. So South Africa, by the way, is one of those countries that I do wish to visit, especially when you look at areas like Cape Town, Durban, maybe Johannesburg, Pretoria. They really have some beautiful places, really, that would be on anybody's bucket list. But my bucket list aside, back to the sport. So thank you for liking as usual there. So the other players that have left the England camp is Aaron Ramsdale, Fikayo Tomori of AC Milan, Adam Wharton of Crystal Palace, Dominic Calvert-Lewin of Leeds have also left the camp too for medical reasons. Now, for those of you that care to remember, Thomas Tuchel summoned a 35-man contingent or squad for the two international friendlies for England against Uruguay and against Japan. And when he summoned the 35-man squad, a lot of people criticized him. You must come, bro. It's amazing. All right. Inshallah. God willing. When he summoned the 35-man squad, he came under lots of criticism from the English media. As you've grown accustomed to the English media, it is always never short of criticism because, first of all, a lot of people are wondering, it's a 35-man squad. How come Alexander Trent-Arnold is not in it and things like that? You are Muslim? No, I'm not Muslim. I just used the Islamic phrase of inshallah, God willing, but I'm not Muslim, I'm Christian. So, okay, that is Cool Grey Songs. Cool Grey Songs says, truth or dare? Really? Maybe truth. But if it is a sporting truth. Anyways, so like I was saying, when he summoned that 35-man squad, he came under a lot of criticism. Why did he need to summon as many players as 35? Of course, he had his reasons why he left out players like Alexander Trent-Arnold. Some people did not see eye to eye with that decision, but it is his prerogative nonetheless. So really, it had to be that. Now, fast forward, they play a game against Uruguay. England were shambolic, to say the least. They did not look anywhere brilliant. In fact, they needed a late goal through Ben White, who was only returning to the England national team since the World Cup 2022, because at some point in 2024, he requested to be exempted from being summoned to the England national team until further notice or indefinitely. So it is after Gareth Southgate left the England national team that he has received a call back to the England national team. And even that was, I don't know, out of luck or bad luck, depending on how you see it, because it came as a chance call. Because it came after Bayer Leverkusen's Jorel Quensha withdrew from the summon or from the contingent due to injury, so he got called in. And when he gets called in, of course he comes. So yesterday he scored very late on to give England the lead. Nonetheless, hero turned villain, quote unquote, when the referee gave away a bit of a subjective penalty on the other side that was converted by Fede Valverde to ensure that England and Uruguay shared the spoils in that international friendly. Meanwhile, Uruguay are under the charges of former Leeds and ex-Athletic Bilbao manager in Marcel Bielsa. So, anyways, I was reading today, I think on one of those popular English media sites, I think it was TalkSport, and somebody gave Ben White a 2 rating, a 2 out of 10 rating. Now, get this. If it was any other player other than Ben White that had found themselves in similar circumstances, trust me, the rating wouldn't have been as low. Because Harry Maguire came out speaking in the aftermath of that game, and he said that what Ben White did in that game, he exactly would have done the same. And the reason as to why he's sort of being quote unquote slandered is because of the earlier incidents. Like I've explained to you, he asked in 2024 never to be summoned back to the England national team until there was a change of guard. Because as we came to learn, after he left the England national team squad at the World Cup 2022 prematurely, we came to learn later on that he had had an altercation or disagreement, or I don't know, with then Southgate's assistant in Steve Holland, who is currently at Manchester United being an assistant to Michael Carrick. So I've told you the circumstances under which he gets the summon. And yeah, he gets that summon and he's played. So some people have taken it as an opportunity for conceding a penalty to further throw shade on his name, you know. Anyway, let me take some of your comments. Okay. Cool Grace says, I was gonna ask you for some volleyball tips. Volleyball tips. Wow. I've not played volleyball in how many years? Ever since I left high school, I've not played volleyball. Um, okay. Volleyball tips. Here's what I can say. Keep your head straight. Never get absent minded. Otherwise, they're going to spike that ball in your face or in another part of the body that you wouldn't want that ball to land. And it can be as painful as hell. Meanwhile, Belgium have scored the fifth goal and it's 5-1 against the USA. Then the other is what? You must be fit. You must be willing to dive, even if it is on the dirt or on the grass or in the sand, and all those kinds of things. So volleyball is a very, very beautiful game, by the way. When you learn to play it, it's a very, very beautiful and interesting game. Even though when I played it, of course, my height is a bit diminutive. I'm a 5'7", 5'8", thereabout. So I find it very ideal for players that are 6 feet plus. I don't mean to say that shorter cannot play, but it favors those a bit slightly more height gifted players when it comes to the spiking, the blocks, and even the serve. When you're going for the serve, if you want to make that serve that is sort of has a spike to it and it's sort of going in I don't want to say diagonally, but sort of more like inverting downwards, that kind of thing. So that's the tip I can give you there about volleyball. Okay. Yukesh says, God loves you because you can see, he gave you amazing football knowledge. Thank you so much, Yukesh. You say England were shambolic, made me fall off my chair, but it's true. What Yukesh is trying to mean that he was probably watching the game. He got so bored that he dozed and he ended up falling out of his chair. Perhaps that is what he's making reference to. Wow, your football knowledge. He says, Ed Howe, this is Raymond Kangumba. Raymond Kangumba is a Newcastle fan. Says Ed Howe should be sacked from Newcastle and Maresca are appointed. This is what I was telling Raymond earlier on today. For those of you that were part of the Saturday broadcast, because we came a bit late. It started at midday. Due to internet challenges. And unfortunately, whereas those internet challenges had been solved, earlier on in the day, I've had to suffer the same issue. Later on in the day, it looks like I have a fiber break at some point leading to my connection. So it's another night of struggle, really. But it is what it is. So we'll soldier on for as long as we can for purposes of this broadcast. Matana, at least choosing to save that one. Anyways, so, okay, knowledge is amazing. Okay, Raymond Kangumba, Ed Howe didn't get sacked. No. He's not trying to say he got sacked already. He wants him to be sacked and be replaced by Enzo Maresca. Although, like I was saying, because he was part of our Saturday afternoon broadcast, I was telling him that he keeps switching his own priorities. Today he wants Maresca. Tomorrow he wants Francesco Farioli. Today afternoon he wanted Edin Tazic, who is being targeted by Athletic Bilbao. That's the former Borussia Dortmund manager and things like that. So, okay, no, he never. What are you talking about, bro? Love you and your channel. No, he is saying it already happened. Yeah, I understand. I know that's how he writes it, but the the meaning of it or what he intends to communicate is what his desire would be. In other words, it's more like saying his sacking should have happened as soon as yesterday. It has not happened in principle, basically, but that's what he intends to communicate. I know when he says that. That's why I do not read it for what it literally is. No. It's not about your English, by the way. It's not about your English. Okay. Yukesh, let me tell you this. Um, Meanwhile, USA have squad to make it 5-2. But here's what I'll say about the English language. I'm not perfect about the English language as well. But um, when you interact people with people in a public forum like this, you must acknowledge that not everybody has a good command of the English language like other people maybe. So therefore, when somebody sends in a comment or a message, you must try to be quick and connect the dots to read out what they intend to mean as opposed to the literary text that it may come with. So apologies. It's not that you've read Raymond's comment wrong. You've read it right, but what he intends to communicate is what I tried to relate to you in that regard. So yeah, okay. You say, oh no. You don't have to apologize. Sorry, football tribe. It's okay. It's okay. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. It's okay. You don't have to feel bad. I understand. I understand. But yeah. So really, okay, let's revert back to to a little bit to England. Now, out of the 35 players that were summoned, you've had how many players? Close to seven players leaving now. Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, Noni Madueke, all belonging to the Arsenal. Aaron Ramsdale of Newcastle, Fikayo Tomori of AC Milan, Adam Wharton of Crystal Palace, Dominic Calvert-Lewin of Leeds United, 7 players leaving the camp. Now, when he summoned his 35-man squad, he said 11 of those players had been set to be rested for a week without playing, and they were going to intentionally miss out on the friendly against Uruguay, but would feature in the subsequent week in their international friendly against Japan. And his rationale is simple. And I really, really liked it for what it was, because whereas he's come under criticism for it, hi, Noah. Noah says, I'll take my leave now. Thank you. See you again. Always a pleasure, Noah, for dedicating the whatever amount of time you can dedicate to the Football Tribe UG channel. Thank you so much for your support and show of kindness. So he did say that because we are heading to the business end of the season, some players that are more or less guaranteed literally a role within the England national team realms would sit out the Uruguay game. And for those of you that may have seen the footages, the likes of Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, Anthony Gordon from Newcastle were seated up there in the stands. And that was his rationale. That's why he did not get to see the likes of Harry Kane. And what I appreciated it for what it was that we're talking about a manager who is being a club manager not too far back ago, because after leaving Chelsea, I think in April 2022, yes, he went on to manage Bayern Munich as an interim. Later on, after Bayern Munich part ways with Julian Nagelsmann, that was some point later on. He knows the implications, first of all, on the load that some of these players carry, especially players coming from clubs where they have been involved in more than one competition. Take the example of Manchester City. Until recently, prior to getting knocked out of the UEFA Champions League, they had been chasing a quadruple. They got knocked out of the UEFA Champions League, and then they went on to play the final of the Carabao Cup, which they won. Congratulations to them, beating Arsenal on the way. So that means they are still in the running for the Premier League title. That one is not yet sealed. So, and then they are in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. So if you have players like Phil Foden from Manchester City, you'd understand him resting them. Although, do not take the example of Phil Foden because he played yesterday. Why? Because Phil Foden this season has not played too much football really. But I just used him as an example. But when you look at players like Bukayo Saka, Declan Rice, those are players that have played many games. And Declan Rice is typical of that, because out of the 31 games Arsenal played in the Premier League, he's featured in 30. And then he's played majority of the UEFA Champions League games. So when it comes to load management, he knows a thing or two about that because, and I found it really, really smart. Why? Also, it's because it's not just about what their other responsibilities remain for them for the remainder of the season with their respective clubs. It also means what is to come for them in the summer in as far as the World Cup is concerned. Because at the end of the season, they're not going to have anything like a break because when the season ends, they're going to be summoned to their respective national team cups and they're going to be preparing for the World Cup. So a serious competition where games come thick and fast. So that means that, yeah, you must manage the load of these players because you look at your player, a pivotal player like Declan Rice, who you know is going to be starting as your midfielder for as long as is available or injury-free and fit. And yet he is a key player for the Arsenal. That means Arsenal are going to use him in literally every game that they have left to play this season because you're playing in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. Whereas it is Southampton, you may not want to underrate them. You still want to advance to the semi-finals. Two, you're in the running for the Premier League title. You're not going to rest him for that. You're in the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League. That's not the time to rest him. So that means they're going to be playing game in, game out, regardless of the competition. So as a manager with the foresight to envision all that, he decided, okay, they'll sit out one game, they'll play another. Now, unfortunately, typical of the English media, they decided to criticize him nonetheless. Why? Because I don't know if they desperately wanted England to win or they or they wanted to send a message. Now, I understand where they're coming from in part to say that the kind of performance they saw of their team yesterday was miserable, that if it had been a World Cup game, none would have enjoyed it. But that's a test game for him to see who else he adds to what he regards as his core squad. Now, some people made the argument of, well, play your main team so that they grow in chemistry. His main team are not strangers. They played enough games under him to know what he wants out of them, to know what he wants out of them. And in a competition or a tournament like the World Cup, you want to go with the squad as strong as possible. That means if you know that Jordan Pickford is a guaranteed starter, you have to prepare for an eventuality. What if, by the time we get to the World Cup, Jordan Pickford is injured? I must have tried out another goalkeeper who I can sort of trust to say, this is my de facto number 2. If you're going into the World Cup, and let's say you're Mark Gahey, who is one of the centre backs that you trust, or an Ezri Konsa, suffers an injury during the camp pre-World Cup, and it means he has to opt out, you must know who is your turn to option. And that's what he's trying to do. However, some people, whereas you and I may think it is obvious to see it for what it is, it's not that easy for them to see. It's not that easy for them to see. And as unfortunate as that sounds, it's anyway, because you cannot blame it on somebody for failing to understand something. You can't blame it on them, really. But also, it's just a different way of looking at these things. Their interpretation of it is perhaps different from my own. But I feel he's very, very justified. In fact, I saw a clip today of a lady who I think must be an Arsenal fan. I think must be an Arsenal fan. When I use the word I think, I'm speculating. who went on a rant against Thomas Tuchel. And she said, should it be discovered that Noni Madueke is going to be out for a good part of the season, or his season is as good and done and dusted, we are quote unquote coming for you. Now, the coming for you, I do not know what she means, whether it's going to be a verbal attack or otherwise. I do not know what she implies with that. But it's she was trying to send the message that you risk our player in an international friendly of little importance, based on her opinion or school of thought, and it cost them a player that should be key to their running to pursue silverware this season. As we know, until Arsenal win, there's going to be fevers within that Arsenal dressing room, as it is going to be within the Emirates stand. So that's the key takeaway from that. That's the key takeaway from that. So that tells you how serious it is, you know. That tells you how serious it is for these clubs. We're talking about this earlier on today, and I was telling you the biggest nightmare. I was telling you the biggest nightmare for most clubs, you know, for most club managers and their respective supporters when it comes to some of these things, you know. Because especially with the final international break towards the end of the season, if they carry the same fears and nail-biting moments during the early or mid stages of the season, how about at the tail end of it? Because, you know, when you lose, let's say, the first 3 games of the season, you know that out of the 38 Premier League games, or out of the 38 league games, that's if you're playing in Italy, if you're playing in Spain, or in the Premier League, because in France and in Germany, it's a table of 18 teams. But in the other 3 leagues, and let's extend it to the other 2, if you lose the first 3 games of the season, you know that in the Italian Serie A, the Spanish La Liga, the Premier League, you still have 35 games to play catch-up. And by extension, in the French League 1 and the German Bundesliga, it means you have 31 games to play catch-up. However, when it comes to March and April, if you come out of the international break and you have a whole host of injuries, you cannot afford to lose 3 games and play catch-up. Why? Because at this stage of the season, majority of the leagues have either at most 10 games left to play, 9 games left to play, or 8 games left to play. Predominantly in the Premier League, they have 7 games left to play, with only Manchester City and Crystal Palace having that extra 1 game. So you must think of it that way, that the margin for error is very, very minimal, or even close to non-existent. You know, even close to non-existent. So it's always going to be difficult for fans to sort of take in, when such things happen. Okay, apologies. I was having a headline updated. So yeah, really, that's what makes it difficult. And on the other side, that's what makes it Very important. So I for one, understood where Thomas Tuchel was coming from, how he sort of envisioned this whole thing, and it's helping. Now, look at how many players have had to leave the camp due to injuries. Now, most of these players that have left would pass for fringe players because, let's be honest, John Stones has not played that many games this season. You're never going to rely on him to start your World Cup game unless there is so many injuries. But the mere fact that he's gotten injured during the cup, it tells you you must find alternatives already. So Joel Kwesha is out through injury. Then Stone is out through injury. Imagine you had not thought of, okay, let's bring in Ben White, regardless of what you think about it. So the same way he's suffering these injuries, or players have had to leave the camp for medical reasons, is the same way it can happen with just a week or 2 weeks left to the start of the World Cup. Are you going to go with injured players at the World Cup and bet that they will recover maybe after match day 1? No. You must be having alternatives. In other words, allow me to use this example. I don't know how popular or unpopular it will be, but in the Iranian regime, they have the 4 successor principle, where if you're at the helm of a position, you have 3 other people waiting for you. In other words, you and 3 others are in line of that position. If you're as a piece, for lack of a better word, if you're knocked off the chessboard as a piece, you have somebody already in waiting to replace you. So even a national team manager must operate in that manner because he has an entire country of talent to look through. That should this piece be knocked off my chessboard, I must be ready to summon this piece to come in. And should that one be equally knocked off, I must be able to summon this. And the only period he has to do that is between now and until the start of the World Cup. Because once it starts, you can no longer include new faces, but existing faces can exit. So he must be prepared for every eventuality prior to the start. And then also, the other thing is that when you test out these players, you're not just testing out on their abilities and fitness or things like that. You're also testing them on your philosophy, on how you want your team to operate. Because it can be very troublesome. You having to bring in a player with, let's say, a week or 2 to the start of the World Cup and begin drilling them into your tactics that they've never played through. I'll give you an example. There's a time the Uganda Cranes then head coach, Milutin Micho Sredojevic, summoned 50 players to the national team. A lot of people thought he was crazy at the time, or the 50 was an exaggeration. No, he knew he was going to filter that down. He simply wanted to put his cards on the table and say, let me put these guys in the same group and have a look at them. Little by little, he went on knocking off those pieces of the puzzle until he came down to the conclusion of the squad that he wanted or saw fit. It can be that simple. It's always difficult to organize a bigger group than it is to organize a smaller group, or even to keep perfect supervision of it. And that's why I told you, and I remember when he was explaining it, he said, for example, we'll have a group of players come train and do things this today, and tomorrow it will be a different group, so that, because it doesn't mean that the group that came in earlier go back and sit and chill. No. Of course, they'll be doing others, some ball work or gym work or whatever it is. But there's at every one point, he is concentrating on a certain group of those players so that they are well drilled in whatever it is he wants them to do. And that's very, very important. That's very, very significant. So for me, I found it quite really, really amazing in as far as that went. But a lot of people have criticized it. But the English media is just of that nature. If there's anything I, for one, got used to, is how the English media operates. First of all, how do they call it? They get carried away so easily. Oftentimes, they get carried away so easily. And sometimes, even though they are well-meaning, in some cases, they've behaved as though they lack the capacity to foresee certain things. It's not that they do not have it, but they behave as though they lack that capacity to foresee things. Theo Walcott, the other day, I think I read somewhere that he was advising Max Doman that should he get the chance to be summoned to the World Cup squad, he should not go. Because according to his assessment, apparently, it derailed his development. Early promotion is good. But it's not always the perfect course of life. I'll give you an example. In this line of work, or what we do here, it's as anywhere else in life, it's constantly a lesson. Every day you're learning something. If you're tapping into the right forums, if you give people a benefit of doubt and you give them your ear, you might learn a thing or two. So, and as we do this work, you're going to pick on pieces of information from different spaces or places. You may pick something of a tweet. You may pick something of somebody's video clip. You may read it off a sports website. It may come in the form of a TV show or a radio program, and you learn something. So I remember, and that's how you pick on pieces of information. So, and then as you grow yourself. So even as a youngster, you're going to be picking up on things. But usually when you skip bigger levels and are tossed into what I normally call the deep end, there are things that are not going to come obvious to you. Let me use the example of school. If you have a bright child, and let's say they in, I don't know, class 5 or level 5, and then you want them to skip 6, 7, and 8 and go to 9, it may be dangerous. It's okay if they skip from 5 and skip 6 and go to 7. That's okay. But going to 8 or 9 could be a little too much for them. And that gap, that big gap that you may have skipped, may come to haunt them at a later stage. It may not come as an immediate side effect or effect. In other words, you may not see it there and then that, oh, because the thing about skipping in the context of school and class is that while your brain has the power to comprehend the things at this new level, the points of interaction with the group that you have been tossed into is not going to be at the same level. Just because you can write the exam of an 8th grader when you're from 4th grade does not mean that when you are relating in everyday things, you're going to be relating at the same level. The example I can use still, remaining with the scope of school, is that, or the scope of childhood is that, as a toddler, you may want to play with a certain cohort of toys. But as you grow older, you drop off some toys and then adopt new others. You may love a different game as a toddler and then as you grow older, you sort of trim off some or grow to love a different sport. So similarly, in that context, I think for Theo Walcott, him going to the World Cup, I think he had skipped so big a stage, because basically what that means, going to the World Cup at 16, is you've been playing with the under 15s, under 17s, and suddenly you're skipping under 19, under 20 or 21, and under 23, and then you're tossed into the deep end. So if you're in under 17 and you skip under 19 and go to under 21, that is okay. But when you make that big a jump, that's when it may become problematic. There are some outliers of players that have made that jump and succeeded at it. But it goes beyond your ability on the pitch, just the same way it goes beyond your ability in class. So you must have the discernment or a certain level of maturity for you to be able to comprehend it for what it is, or what it actually is. So really, it's not always as straightforward, simple as some people may cause you to believe or to think. So in that realm, in that regard, in that context, So I think if I were Max Doman, understand it could be a chance of a lifetime. But if you're as good as they sing praise of you, then you should not be worried about missing a future opportunity. But like I said, sometimes the English media behaves as though they do not have the awareness or the ability to foresee what could happen, especially having gone through a series of things it's like deja vu always. In other words, you find yourself in a moment that has already played out the same way it is playing out previously in your life. And if you cannot learn from it, then what's the instance of going through it? Because every time a youngster comes up today in English football, for me, it's deja vu. I'm like, I have been here before. I was there when the English media wrote the England Messi in reference to Theo Walcott, when they thought they had gotten their Xavi in Jesse Lingard, and so many others. But have they lived to the billing? Not even close. So for me, it's always a feeling of deja vu. And that's why I want those youngsters to be protected. I was in a forum recently, and somebody mentioned this, that when you cast a critical eye or lens on how young talents are managed in Spain versus how they are managed in England, you may find a stark difference in regards to how their profiles and brands are built. I think, and I want to associate myself with his assessment, because I have a feeling that in Spain, they do not inflate the abilities of players, at least not intentionally. They do not attempt to inflate the brands of those respective players. Whereas in the English media, the reverse is often true. How? It's okay to draw comparisons to a young talent or to an emerging talent, to a talent that you've seen previously in the past. That's very okay. But the kind of language tone of voice that you use in that comparison is what tells us that you're making an exaggeration of it. It's okay to praise youngsters for their goodness. But when you begin comparing a player to Lionel Messi, a player that's barely scratched the surface of the game, a player that has not yet proven themselves good enough to even lace Messi's shoes, then you could spike their ego. You could easily tap into their emotional side or psychological side for them to think they've made it before they even scratch the surface. You know, that sort of thing. So I think English media must have the discernment. And I remember, again, Thomas Tuchel was speaking about this, and he said, he was speaking about Max Doman, and he said, he did not close the door for him on the England national team, but he said there's already enough sort of spotlight on him. He did not want to add to that, because just imagine, because in the aftermath of their Arsenal's 2-0 victory against Everton, the spotlight was on him. Just imagine he chose to extend that with an England national team call, and maybe gives him a couple of minutes. Maybe he plays well or he doesn't. Still, there would have been a further spotlight on him. And you see, the thing about the media is that there's a bit of a love-hate relationship with humanity. Why? The media can help build your brand to proportional or to exponential degrees or heights. But the same media can turn against you and bring you down. So that's just how it operates. However, in similar context, the one thing I want to appreciate about the English media is that usually, if it is their own that they may want to deflate, they have a soft hand of cracking the whip on them. Usually, they'll justify a decline of a player than criticizing the player for the decline. I don't know if you make sense of that. Usually, they will justify the decline of a player than criticizing them. In other words, they will tell you why that player is no longer performing at the levels they should be. And if you want a good example of that, go on BBC Sport and read a recent story that was done about Bukayo Saka. I don't remember the headline of the story, but it will give you insights about the story. Sorry, about what I'm trying to say. Also, associate yourself with reading another article that was done about Liam Rasinha, still by BBC Sport. I was reading this a couple of days ago, and they sort of tap into what I'm trying to communicate at the moment. I don't know if I can try and find them quickly to give you the exact headlines, really. I don't know. Yes, one of them about Bukayo Saka particularly is the headline is Saka's form becoming a worry for Arsenal? It's a question that they attempt to answer. And when you read the article, they tell you why it is looking the way it is looking, as opposed to, saying he's not stepping up enough. Maybe he's, instead of trying to criticize him for his underperformance, like majority of us have done, or especially on the side of analyzing the game, they've explained why. They've not criticized. Then there's a story about Liam Rasinha. I don't know if I can still try and find it, but I'm hoping, I'm really, really hoping. Let me hope, I'm not hoping against hope here. It's about Liam Rasinha, and they're trying to to paint for you a picture that perhaps it's not as bad as you think when it comes to when it comes to Chelsea and Liam Rasinia. And the way the way they go into it, the way they go into it is that they cast more shade on his Premier League performances as opposed to performances from elsewhere in other competitions. It's not that they don't mention those other competitions. For example, in that article, they do not dwell too much on the H2 aggregate loss against PSG, nor do they dwell too much on the home and away loss in the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup against Arsenal. But they focus more on the positives, and they bring you certain numbers in comparison to his predecessor in Enzo Maresca. So that's what I'm trying to say, that when they are cracking the whip on their own or one of their own, they have a soft touch to it, and they know how to, they'll justify the situation as opposed to criticizing. I'm trying to see if I can find the headline to that story. Yes, this is a story about Liam Rasinia that I want you guys to go and read. They also pose a question: have Chelsea progressed under Liam Rasinia, or it's actually, have Chelsea progressed under Liam Rasinia? Question mark. Then they say, analyzing his Blues tenure. So as part of that analysis, they show you the Premier League table ever since he took over. And he's managed Chelsea through 10 games. And they would currently be fourth on that table ever since he took over. In those 10 games that he's managed them through, he's won 5, he's drawn 2, he's lost 3, losing to Everton, to Newcastle, and Arsenal. So, whereas that is the case, so you can see that that table is painting for you a different message or a different picture. It tells you to be more positive about him than you would be about him. And it shows you that Manchester United are leading the pile. Arsenal comes second. Remember, Arsenal are the table leaders. But Man United, 23 points, having won 7 games, drawn 2 and lost only 1. Arsenal, having won 6, drawn 3 and lost 1. Manchester City would come third, having played 9, won 5, drawn 3 and lost 1. So you can see they try to paint for you that sort of picture. But it doesn't end there. They go and draw comparison between him and Enzo Maresca. And Enzo Maresca had managed Chelsea through 19 games thus far in the Premier League this season. And his average points per game was 1.6. When you look at Liam Rasinia, it's 1.7. So you can see there's an improvement. When you look at the average goals per game, Maresca averaged 1.7. Liam Rasinia is averaging 1.9. When it comes to XG, expected goals per game, Maresca had 1.7. He has 2.2. So that sort of messaging, is well crafted to justify something as opposed to criticizing something. It's not to say that the article or the piece does not have any parts of criticism. The criticism is there. They just do not dwell on it. They explain more the positives, and things like that. So, and when you look at their possession, Maresca averaged 59.3%. Liam Rasinia is averaging 62%. those little pieces of information or data will tell you what I'm trying to tell you about the English media and how they handle things, really. Anyways, let me hope I've explained that one really well enough. But yeah, Raymond came back to mention about Enzo Maresca and Ed Howe. We understand, Raymond. Thank you so much for always chipping in to share your thoughts with us. I'll leave you with this question, and perhaps you'll answer me tomorrow or the next time you can find time to join us. Who are your 3 favorite Newcastle players currently? But also, who are your 3 favorite Newcastle players of all time? So it's 2 questions, or two in one. Your current 3 favorite players and your favorite 3 Newcastle players of all time. I'll leave you with that question. And the reason as why I choose to leave it with you is because I grew up with a friend who supported Newcastle because they were called Alan, and at the time, Alan Shearer was still playing for Newcastle. Since then, they've switched allegiances, of course, but nonetheless, they had their time with the Magpies. So I'll leave that with you tonight. So guys, you'll allow me to wrap it up here. And thank you so much, Noah. Thank you so much, Raymond Kangumba. Thank you so much, Yukesh. Thank you so much, Shahadat. And every single one of you that has managed to catch tonight's podcast. Stay blessed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.